the chair is glad to welcome our mayor, Mayor Bob Buckhorn, to make his budget presentation. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could bring up the budget presentation on the screen. This is a lot nicer screen than when Councilmember Miranda and I were here. Just for the record, I did not, nor did anybody in my staff, copy this speech from anybody else.
We're not doing Orlando's budget, is what you're saying, right?
At least I hope not. And if somebody would please tell me if they did, so I can deny it for 3 days. First of all, it's good to see you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. This is the one time of year that you allowed me to come to your chambers, and I am thankful for that. It has been an interesting year. It has been a productive year. It has been a year that I think all of you should be proud of, in spite of the economic conditions that we have found ourselves in over the last certainly the 5 years that most of us have been together. If you think back to where we were in 2011 when the majority of us came to this council and to this administration, it was a very different place. It was a very different country, it was a very different state, and certainly it was a very different city. Unemployment in the city of Tampa was close to 10%. There were over 4,000 plus houses in some state of mortgage foreclosure. Our neighbors and friends and family members were losing their jobs and people were losing their houses. On day one in 2011, when I assumed this office, we were $30 million in debt. It was a pretty bleak scenario. Thankfully, my predecessor, Mayor Iorio, had left our reserves very, very healthy. That enabled us to get through that recession over the last 5 years and emerge to where we are now. We are not out of the woods yet. In spite of all of the construction and building that is taking place, we, along with other cities in this country, are still struggling to find our footing. And I can tell you that, and you will see this as we move through this presentation, that the resources that we have are not even close to what we had in 2007. And if you can imagine that almost 10-year gap, and we are still not at the point where we are recovering in property tax revenues what we received in 2007, you will understand the magnitude of the task that we have embarked on over the last 5 years and the good work that all of us have been able to accomplish, still moving the community forward, but doing it with less people and a significantly less amount of revenue. Let's see if we can get this thing moving. We can easily, there we go. All right, we're going to take you through some of the budget highlights, the recommended budget overview, some of the highlights of the capital improvement program, as well as the enterprise department budgets, and then the calendar moving forward. I think you will be proud to look at this chart and see some of the accolades that your city has been awarded over the last couple years. It is an amazing list of things that point out just exactly how far we've come in the last 5 years and where we are positioned on the national and international stage. If you start at the top, I think that was one of the most significant recognitions that we got, being named as one of the best cities in the Southeast United States by Money Magazine, as well as one of the top places to move, as well as one of the best cities for women to open a business in, as well as one of the best cities for veterans. That is a pretty significant list of accomplishments, and I know you are as proud as I am of some of the things that we have done. I think I'm going to buy you some new equipment.
Yeah, okay. And also, it's not on our screens either.
It's not on your screens?
Yeah.
No, that's what I was
It's okay. We're
That's okay.
muddle around
We'll
with the
just
people in the back and
ask
just
for
put
it
it
in
on
the
our
budget.
screen.
Just add it on.
I don't know what that was.
There you go.
Surface of the moon?
It might be. All right, let's see if we can get, all right.
There you go.
There we go.
There we go, okay. As many of you know, because I talk about it a lot, 3 out of the last 5 years, the Tampa Bay area has created more jobs than any place else in the state of Florida. Just last year alone, the Tampa Bay metropolitan area created 42,000 new private sector jobs. These are not government jobs, these are private sector jobs. And as we have tried to change Tampa's economic DNA, I think these numbers are reflecting the growth in some of the value-added industries that we need to attract the intellectual capital that will allow us to continue. You see that in, just in 2011 alone, the unemployment was at 9.9% rate. Now we are at 4.6%. That is a significant drop in unemployment in our community, and we see it every day as our friends and neighbors are employed and able to provide for their families. The highlights of this and the goals for this budget, much of the same mission that we embarked on 5 years ago, creating jobs, protecting our kids, enhancing our quality of life, improving our infrastructure, retaining and rewarding our employees, balancing the budget without using reserves, streamlining the regulatory and permitting process, and I think by all measures we have succeeded at every one of those things. Some of the highlights that we have accomplished and some of the focuses that we have embarked on certainly involves our kids and our Parks and Recreation highlights for this last year. As you know, as many of you joined me the other day at the groundbreaking for Julian B. Lane, parks are an important part of what we do. They are the great equalizer in our community. They are the places where families can gather and children can be children. We have achieved a number of national awards in our Parks and Recreation Department. One of the programs that I am particularly excited about and I think has done as much to stabilize and provide opportunities for our youth in this community is the Stay and Play program. Stay and Play, as you know, like a lot of cities around the country, we were experiencing significant violence in our inner city neighborhoods. We knew we had to do something. We knew that if we didn't do something, that there would be kids that would be at risk, kids that potentially would be victims of gun violence, and we weren't willing to tolerate that. We made a decision, and we're willing to pay for that, to embark on a project that I think by all measures has been a tremendous success. We refer to it as Stay and Play. What we did was open our Parks and Recreation centers in some of our tougher neighborhoods until midnight, 7 days a week, through the end of the summer. Based on the success of that, we have extended that and have done it in some of those same parks year-round. 69,000 kids have accessed those Parks and Recreation centers under the guidance and mentorship and protection of adults, of teachers, of coaches. They are not in harm's way when they are in our facilities. And as Councilman Reddick can attest to, those children that are in our facilities are not out on the streets. And if they are not out on the streets, they are not as likely to be seduced by gangs and succumb to the violence. I can promise you this, even though we can never measure this, that we saved lives by opening up these parks. There are children today in East Tampa and Sulphur Springs and West Tampa that are alive today because they were in our facilities and they were not out on the streets and potentially victims of random gun violence or gang activities. Okay, so I have to say next slide.
Yes, sir.
All right, next slide. You want this? Do you even need this? There's going to be a little bit more in the audio-visual budget.
It's only practice.
Yeah, it's only practice, yeah. All right, again, this highlights on next slide. All right. I know how we just saved money. We just got rid of the CTTV department. Next slide. All right. This slide points out why this is important. Those after-school hours and hours when many single parents are having to work, why it's important that we keep these facilities open. Next slide. Our after-school All-Stars program is another thing that we introduced. This was initially started in the state of Florida in Orlando. We brought it to Tampa This is another opportunity for some of our young people to engage in activities that are healthy, that are productive, where they have great leadership and great mentorship. Next slide. Operation Reveille. We made a commitment to the President of the United States, along with some other mayors in America. This is a priority for Mrs. Obama, and that is to end veterans homelessness. And so we signed up and said, yes, Mr. President, we're willing to do what we can to try and end veterans homelessness. We launched Operation Reveille in partnership with Hillsborough County. And as a result of Operation Reveille, our community has experienced a 42% decline in veterans homelessness. We are not happy until we get to net zero. We may not ever get there, but we're going to continue to push to try and get the men and women who have served our nation off of the streets and into shelter. Next slide. All right, so these are some of the highlights from what has occurred in terms of economic development. Since I became the mayor in 2011, we've permitted nearly $10 billion worth of construction. Last year, we did $2.4 billion worth of projects, which set a record for Tampa. In fiscal year 16, we're projected to end at about $2.3 billion, and revenues in fiscal year 17 are anticipated to be $7.5 million in revenues. Those are good numbers. We said from day one that we couldn't cut our way out of this recession. We had to grow our way out of the recession. That's why we streamlined the permitting process. Heretofore, we had not been competitive. People did not want to come and do business with us because the regulatory process was so burdensome. That doesn't exist today, and we've become the model for how to permit as opposed to the poster child for a bureaucracy. And I couldn't be prouder of our folks in construction services who are doing that. Next slide. We've invested over $96 million in some of our urban neighborhoods. As all of you know, some of you participated in it. We created a master plan that I think will be the blueprint for Tampa's economic development for the next 25 years. It's referred to as the Envision program. Part of that Envision program was identifying the long-term goals of the community down to the granular level and investing the money accordingly. This wasn't a plan that I was going to put on the shelf. This was a plan that we were going to implement. We are largely completed with the bulk of that, but it is important that that framework remain in existence long after all of us are gone, because that gives developers, it gives investors, it gives neighborhoods an opportunity to know what their future will look like based on a plan where over 1,800 people participated. Center City, our urban core, is doing well. Currently, we have over 3,000 residential units that are either under construction or contemplated to be under construction over the next 12 to 18 months. We've invested over private capital has invested over $500 million in our downtown hotels and office buildings. As many of you know, most of the buildings have flipped and been sold. That obviously adds value to the property tax revenues, and they are selling at a very, very high price point. The decision by the University of South Florida, after about 2.5 years of lobbying and effort at the state level, is going to move their medical school and the USF Heart Institute into downtown Tampa. I can tell you in no uncertain terms, that is the most significant event that has occurred in our urban core for decades, and I anticipate will have a lasting impact, a generational impact on the development of downtown. As a result of that decision, the applications at the USF Med School have already increased significantly, and the MedCat scores have risen in terms of the universe that is applying to the medical school have risen significantly. That decision to move it to the downtown area has increased the level of applications, the quality of the applications, and I can tell you in terms of attracting faculty, researchers, and medical students, that decision is going to be critical for us moving forward. Next slide. These are some of the projects in downtown Tampa that have either been announced or that are underway. Not all in downtown. There are some significant investments in Ybor City that we have broken ground on or cut ribbons on, or we anticipate moving forward will be coming out of the ground in the not too distant future. Next slide. Riverwalk Tower on the site that shall not be named. is potentially the most significant and new construction project in downtown Tampa in 20 years. It's a 52-story tower. It's mixed use. It's got 7 stories of parking, 14 stories of office space, and 31 stories of luxury residential units. Charlie Miranda has the penthouse reserved. 2 penthouses. I can't wait for the coffee shop talk when that's announced. The view corridors out of that building, out over the bay, will be the best view corridors in the Bay Area. I cannot be more excited. That is private capital that is being invested largely because of the investment that we made in the Riverwalk. I mean, that's exactly an example of where public sector investment at a very minimal amount will seed and encourage private capital that will be invested in that Riverwalk. The ground floor of that particular project will be all retail and restaurants, which is exactly what we need on the Riverwalk. That will be an amazing project for our waterfront. It's being developed by Larry Feldman, and the architect is the Gensler office out of Shanghai. It's going to be a pretty exciting project. Next slide, please. Obviously, we are all familiar, and City Council has been a big part of this, sitting as the CRA. Our relationship with Mr. Vinnick and Strategic Property Partners, as well as investments by Bill Gates' investment fund. That investment has grown to not just $1 billion, but over $2 billion, and in all likelihood even more, on 40 acres in downtown Tampa. It obviously includes the USF Heart Institute and College of Medicine, a new hotel, a redeveloped Channelside Bay Plaza. Roadway construction in conjunction with the city will start in August of this year. So we will start to see dirt being moved, and I can tell you that I am appreciative of the support that the CRA has given to this in our relationship with Mr. Vinnick. This will return multifold back to the CRA as these projects come online and start replenishing the CRA with property tax revenues. Next slide. Tampa Heights project. Most of you were at the announcement of this, led by Soho Capital, Adam Harden and Chaz Bruck. This project has been long overdue. Councilmember Miranda and I were on the council when we did the original development agreement. It has been a long time coming. We could not be more excited. In my estimation, that is one of the last best pieces in the southeast United States in an urban core, on the waterfront, some of the best view corridors into downtown Tampa. As you have seen by the success of Waterworks Park, again, an investment that we made as a city, has triggered the redevelopment of Eulalie, where Mr. Gonsmart is doing significantly higher revenue projections than what he had anticipated. That tells you how successful and what a great destination that is. The Heights project will be equally as successful. The Encore project, a project by Tampa Housing Authority that has taken a violent, formerly public housing project, Central Park Village, and the Encore project is coming out of the ground as we speak. That is a model for a Tampa Housing Authority HUD city relationship. It is, for those of you that have been there, know it's transformed the lives of the people that are living there now, and is an example of how a HUD project should work. That was a choice neighborhood project. We, and I'll talk about this a little later, are competing for a choice neighborhood grant again this year. But we have great partners in Tampa Housing Authority. Next slide. This is something that each of you should take great pride in. I think this particular project, 40 years, 6 mayors in the making, will have an impact on our community that is immeasurable. We hear it every day from the people that we serve. That is a destination that has opened up the waterfront to our community in ways that we hadn't even imagined. It has become a gathering point. It is the linkage between Channelside and the Tampa Heights area. It is a conduit for folks to explore our waterfront, to open up that Hillsborough River, to make people realize, and I can't tell you how many conversations that I have listened to over the last year and a half that that's been open, where people will come down on the Riverwalk, even longtime Tampanians, who had not been down there in years, who had written off downtown Tampa as a place where the sidewalks rolled up at 5 o'clock. They go down and they walk along that Riverwalk, people who have lived here for 5 generations, and they walk around looking like a kid in a candy store. and you hear them say to themselves, what happened here? This is an amazing river. Look, honey, look at the downtown. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Where did this come from? I mean, I hear that conversation all the time. I mean, Guido is out there every week walking on the Riverwalk. It is a destination, and I think it has transformed the way we feel about ourselves, the way others look at us, and it will trigger significant private capital that will be deployed along this river that will more than compensate for the investment that we made and that the federal government made with us in the completion of that. Doyle Carlton segment was finished in 2016, connecting Waterworks Park to the Straz. Obviously, the Straz, as a result of the success of the Riverwalk, has embarked on a master planning process that will fully take advantage of that waterfront access for our Performing Arts Center, predominantly privately funded. But it is doing exactly what we wanted to do, which is activating that waterfront and creating a destination for people to eat and drink and walk and enjoy the waterfront. Next slide. West Tampa redevelopment, a priority and a passion for Councilmember Reddick and for many of you who have either lived there as a child or grown up there. Councilmember Capeen and I were talking at the groundbreaking for Julian B. Lane, and you know, her comments to me about this being long overdue were dead on right. This is an investment in a community that has not received the same priority for decades that it deserved. This is a significant investment, and I am deeply appreciative of all of you that supported this project, knowing full well that it was expensive, knowing full well that you know, in these tight times, these are tough decisions that we have to make, and you stood up and made them. And I am thankful for that. And I think for the communities that surround Julian B. Lane Riverfront Park, as well as our entire community, if you can imagine what Curtis Hickson did for downtown, and that Curtis Hickson is only 5 acres, just imagine what will happen in West Tampa and the areas around West Tampa with a 23-acre park, and given what the plans are for this. It will be transformative. It will change West Tampa as we know it. It is also a critical link to our efforts to redevelop North Boulevard Homes, the yard that we have at Spruce and Rome that we are moving those vehicles off. When this is all said and done, this will be the largest redevelopment project this city has ever undertaken in a neighborhood that deserves it and desperately needs it. It will be 150 acres. That will be recreating an entire section of our city. We are competing for a Choice Neighborhood Grant, but I can promise you this, whether we are successful or not, and it is a very, very competitive process. I think we've put one of the best plans into submission that any city could possibly do it. It is bigger than most. It's not just a public housing play. It is a public-private endeavor. I think we will be competitive, but even if we are not chosen, we're moving forward. North Boulevard Homes is largely vacated at this point. I think there's 30% of the residents that are still there. Demolition on North Boulevard Homes will start in first quarter of 2017. We are almost complete, probably second quarter of 17, to move the vehicles off the Rome Avenue yard, which will open up that land for redevelopment. Those buildings will be demolished. Our properties will be demolished up there. So in essence, you will have 150 acres of prime property on the waterfront that will be redeveloped. The residents of public housing will be allowed to come back. We're taking the density from 800 units, which currently exist, to a total of 2,300 units. It's mixed use, it's market rate as well as subsidized. It will be a neighborhood that we are proud of, and that those children that live right now in North Boulevard Homes, that every day that they go outside of their houses, they are at risk, will have the same quality of life as our kids do, and they absolutely deserve it. So I could not be prouder of that, and thank you to all of you that helped make that happen. Next slide. Julian B. Lane, and we just did that. All right. Some of the companies that are finding us and excited to be here, we've had a lot of interest in Tampa. I would submit to you, and I'm privy to a lot of these conversations, that for every major corporate relocation that is out there, Tampa is on the list, and we are on the short list. We were in the top 4 for the GE relocation, so that tells you how significant we have become in that world. We're not going to get them all, but I can tell you that we will get our share, and I couldn't be more excited about that. Next slide. Obviously, Google Fiber has found us. We are working through that process right now. We have been at this for about 9 months, creating the framework for which they can operate. Our staff has been amazing in terms of facilitating that process. You guys have been supportive. You've got some votes coming up shortly on some of the agreements and some of the franchise agreements. Google Fiber puts us on the map in ways that we can't even imagine at this point. The fact that they looked at us, and Jacksonville is the only 2 cities in Florida that they were contemplating. My goal was to beat Jacksonville and get our agreements done beforehand. I think we are close to realizing that. But when it's all said and done, the fact that we will be wired with Google Fiber, which is about 100 times faster than the existing networks, really makes us more competitive. And in that technology space, will drive a lot of growth. Next slide. Johnson & Johnson, another world-class company that is calling Tampa home. We continue to attract those. Next slide. But it's not all about corporate growth. It's about neighborhood support and quality of life. We, as you know, have been passionate about taking care of our neighborhoods, particularly our neighborhoods that need our intervention the most. We have really emboldened and empowered code enforcement, largely because some of the concerns that you have raised over the years. We've added bodies, which is important. We've added equipment. We have been very targeted in terms of the neighborhoods that we are attacking, if you will. If you look at some of those numbers up there, I think you will find them to be pretty astounding. Jake Slater and Sal Ruggiero have been really, really good about understanding what this mission is all about. 85% compliance on civil citations for code enforcement. All of us know it's probably the issue that you hear more than anything is code complaints. All of us know that that has a direct impact on quality of life. And those neighborhoods that have neighbors that are not cooperating or absentee landlords, I mean, we've got to be aggressive about going after them and cleaning up the areas. We've cross-trained solid waste employees. We've added additional heavy equipment to remove debris. It has been a tremendous success. In 2015, and I know this is near and dear to Councilman Reddick's heart, we cleaned up 906 illegal dumping sites. We know what that means in a community. We know when people back up that pickup truck in the alley or a vacant lot and dump out a whole load of mattresses or refrigerators or couches, if it's not dealt with immediately, it attracts more and more and more, and it becomes a dump. I see it every day as I'm driving around. East Tampa in particular has been challenged by folks who are dumping it, so we made this a priority. We anticipate in 2016 that we will do 920 illegal dumping sites that we have cleaned. In terms of debris that we removed, in 2015, we did almost 2 tons of debris. No, actually, we did a lot more than that. 200,000. 2,000 tons of debris that we picked up out of alleys, out of lots, that would have stayed there had we not been out there doing this. The other project that we are particularly proud of that we've started in the last 5 years is our neighborhood university. We've had 5 graduating classes. I mean, if ever we're going to build the network of strong neighborhood activists that will be here long after all of us are gone, it's to empower a next generation of neighborhood activists. We have set up a training program. It has been wildly successful, and I think if you talk to anybody that has been through that, they will tell you it's one of the most rewarding civic things that they have done. Over 190 students, not students, but civic activists have been through the neighborhood university. Next slide. Nehemiah Project in Sulphur Springs, an area that, absent our intervention, I think we would have lost. Sulphur Springs was teetering on the verge of chaos and collapse. And thanks to a lot of our private sector partners, some of our religious community, from Idlewild Baptist to some of the other churches in the Sulphur Springs area, to the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club and the Children's Board, all of whom made this a priority, all of whom put their own parochial views aside and worked together. The Sulphur Springs Elementary School is going from a K through 6 to a K through 8 to make sure we can track those kids, keep them in the same neighborhood. I think this has been an amazing success story in a collaborative fashion. We have a small role in it in terms of some of the code issues. All of you were out there when we launched the Nehemiah project. We have already demolished 53 basically abandoned houses and structures. 11 new homes are constructed. Phase 2 will continue this year, and we will be adding additional homes with the private sector. Next slide. Something near and dear to Councilmember Monteleone's heart, and this will be her last budget. So this is our gift to our friends and neighbors in the New Tampa area. In the fiscal year 2017 budget, we will be constructing fire station number 23. We had acquired the land previously. The growth in New Tampa is now starting to emerge again. During the recession, it was virtually nothing. But we recognize now that with the anticipated entitlements and the demand for housing up in New Tampa, that we needed to fulfill that obligation. And so we will be building fire station number 23. We also have included in future years planning dollars and construction dollars for fire station number 24, which will be done. We've got design dollars in there, which will be done as the growth continues to occur. But fire station 23 will be built. Next slide. Another project that all of you should be very, very proud of, many years in the making. This was a commitment that was made prior to most of us being here. This was a commitment that Mayor Iorio had made to the community, but it was up to us to actually fund it and get it done. So we did that. This is about an $8.7 million project, and I am confident in saying that it is probably the largest investment in the celebration of the history of African Americans, particularly the African American community along Central Avenue in the state of Florida. But for us, this was personal for me. I knew many of the people that are highlighted on those walls, and certainly their descendants. It's an issue and a park that allows our community to come together again on that common ground, and to understand and to learn about the contributions of our African American forefathers and community citizens that helped get us where we are today. They have never been recognized before in this significant a fashion. I couldn't think of a better way to do it, from C. Blythe Andrews Sr. to Mr. Harvey to Arthenia Joyner's daddy. It is, as Mr. Reddick said at the groundbreaking, an opportunity that for our kids to learn their history. Because if they don't see it, they don't read it, they don't learn it, they don't appreciate it. This gives them the opportunity to appreciate the contributions of our fellow citizens, and I couldn't be prouder of this. This is a cool place. And we accommodated the skate pole. The skaters, after I let them jump over me when they broke the ground, have moved from where they hated me to now they think I'm the coolest mayor in America. So I'll take it. I'll take it. Next slide. Again, we're repurposing our historic buildings, just like we did with the old federal courthouse, just like we did with the waterworks building. This is something that this council was strongly in favor of. It was not without its challenges. I acknowledge that. It had been rebuilt in years past. It wasn't done correctly. It had been shuttered for a number of years, but thanks to the advocacy of this council, particularly Councilmember Reddick, we were able to find the money to be able to do that. This is a place where Councilmember Miranda grew up, where he learned to swim. Not Olympic caliber, but those water wings were okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna be in Rio. Where are you gonna be?
Yeah, Philadelphia. This is a place.
Ask about the growing up part.
This is a place for a lot of longtime Tampanians where there are very fond memories. Many of our top baseball players came out of this park, Charlie included. It was a place where children learned how to swim. I will tell you though, these historic pools are difficult projects to do. We found that out with the pool Roy Jenkins on Davis Island, and this is not an inexpensive project. Because of the nature of it, because it's elevated above ground, these kinds of pools are prone to leaking. So we are hopeful, and we took some extra measures to make sure that it doesn't, and we were willing to pay for that in terms of, you know, high capacity liners and things like that that will help that to not occur. But we're going to open that up in August, so it's going to be a great time for the kids in that neighborhood to learn how to swim, because I can tell you, for our communities of color, particularly our African American community, the inability to swim leads to tragic consequences. And we need these kids to get in that pool to learn how to swim, because they will be faced with circumstances down the road that they may not be able to deal with if they don't have the opportunity to swim. We have also added to the budget, and you'll see this a little bit further down the road in terms of personnel. We're going to staff this pool 6 days a week, year-round. And we are going to do the same thing at Roy Jenkins Pool. There will be staggered hours, but I didn't want these pools. I made the investment to put heaters in them, certainly in Cascaden, and we're looking at heaters for Roy Jenkins. I want this pool to be used a lot. I want these kids to have access to it year-round. I was willing to put that extra money in here, and we're going to put the extra staff to accommodate it so it can be 6 days a week, year-round. The staff is not cheap, as you know. And we'll even have music. All right, next slide. All right, another great project with a legend, Cal Ripken, the Iron Man, who holds the record in Major League Baseball for the most consecutive games played. We, in conjunction, thanks to Greg Baer, with his foundation, have built a world-class baseball, softball, athletic field in Sulphur Springs at Spring Hill Park. If you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. I mean, it truly is a world-class facility in a very tough neighborhood. If we can keep kids on the athletic fields, we can keep them out of trouble. And so this park, and you can see Cal Ripken right there, this park really was a partnership that was well worth it. I appreciate Greg Baer having a relationship with the Cal Ripken Foundation to bring this here. It's going to be one of those legacy type projects that I hope all of you are proud of. Next slide. Another similar project that we are involved in to some degree. I think this will anchor the redevelopment of the West River area. This is the Brian Glazier family JCC. It was the Armory at one point, another historic structure that had been abandoned for many, many years. The J will be a destination for everybody in the community, not just the members of our Jewish community. It will be a place where everyone can come. They are doing an amazing job out there. It is going to be the anchor on that end, and a place where the community can gather. They will have swimming pools. We are moving our arts program in partnership with the J. So our arts program will have a brand new art studio in that facility. So that will encourage people to take advantage of it. We are hiring some additional people to staff it, but I think it's the kind of partnership. And this building is being done with state funding, obviously with local donations from people like the Glazier family and Mr. Vinnick, as well as city dollars and county dollars. So it's a true public-private partnership that will take an old historic building and repurpose it. Next slide. Obviously, Bayshore Boulevard, the most beautiful street in the state of Florida. I hear more compliments about Bayshore Boulevard than almost anything that we've done. People love what we have done on Bayshore Boulevard. They are proud of that street, and with the enhancements that we have made, it really has become, I think, even more attractive than it already was. The West River Trail. Eventually, we will have a trail on the west side of the river that will start at the site of the old Tribune building, which will, in short order, be demolished, and there will be 400 units of residential there. That trail will start there, and I hope eventually on Bayshore, but it will start at Related and move all the way through. This is Plant Park, which we own, which we have finished the construction on. thanks to our partnership with Ron Vaughn and the University of Tampa. We own the easement behind Tampa Prep. The trail will continue through Riverfront Park. We already have the easement, and there is an existing trail behind Blake High School that has been closed off. And then we have the easements going all the way up to Ricks on the River. So what you see here, with hopefully an addition of some historic lights and benches, will literally start at the Tribune Building, run all the way up to Ricks on the River, connecting both sides of the river now. So it's pretty exciting. All right, now to the nitty gritty. Next slide. All right, this is our budget. This is where the rubber hits the road. Our budget is a gross budget of over $1 billion, net budget of $905 million. You can see how the budget is broken out. There are really two pots of money, which all of you know, but it's important that as we talk to a larger audience here that folks understand some of the constraints that we have. Two pots of money, one being the enterprise funds, and those are under the direction of Brad Bayard, water, sewer, wastewater, self-sufficient based on rates. Generally, we set that aside. We can't use enterprise fund dollars to run the general revenue side of the ledger and pay for personnel and things like that on the general revenue side. Enterprise funds represent about $351 million. The general fund, which is generally what we talk about here, and generally where we have the most flexibility and the ability to prioritize non-enterprise fund activities. General fund includes police, fire, parks, all of the general government activities. It is personnel heavy because of the nature of what these departments do. And personnel largely drives this budget. The more bodies you have, the more money it costs you, because you're talking about pension contributions, you're talking about healthcare costs. It is a budget. City government, any government, is driven largely by its people. So that's the breakout in the general sense of where we are. Next slide. This is the general fund expenditures, and this is largely where we spend most of our time. As you can see, and this hasn't diminished really since, I started in 1987, and this was largely the same. Public safety, these two gentlemen right here, their departments gobble up 65% of our general revenue budget. Now that's a good thing. We want our community safe. We will deploy the manpower necessary to keep it safe. When someone calls 911, we want those firemen to have the tools and the capability and the manning to be able to respond. If you don't have a safe community in every sense of the word, both on the police and fire side, you can't attract those kinds of companies that we saw. Our crime rate in the city of Tampa in the last decade has dropped over 60%. I would submit to you that there are not many cities in this country that can lay claim to a crime reduction like what we have experienced here in Tampa under the leadership of Steve Hogue and Jane Castor and now Chief Eric Ward. That is a real accomplishment, and that is something that we should be proud of. And every neighborhood in our city is safer, particularly some of our tougher neighborhoods, thanks to the work of TPD and their partners, Tampa Fire Rescue. Next slide. All right, here we go. This is what it looked like in 2011 when most of us came here. As you can see, red is bad, blue is good. That's what the first thing Sonia told me when I came here. Sonia and Mike Perry. They said, Mayor, they said, red's bad, blue's good. And I've adhered to that for the last 5 years. It keeps it pretty simple. Yeah, no politics at all. 2011, you can see that the expenditures far surpassed the revenues. Each year since then, we've been getting closer and closer to being able to balance the budget, having revenues meet expenditures. 2015 was the first year that we were able to pull that off. Again, bear in mind that we came in here with a $30 million deficit. Folks, and I can't overstate this, all of us collectively, we will be lucky in this economy to start a budget process in the 8 years that we will be together, not in a deficit position. We are not out of the woods yet. 2015, it balanced. 16, it balanced. 17, it balanced. Moving forward, though, I will tell you that we will have some challenges. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But those red lines meeting the blue lines is a very, very good thing. And we have come a long way over the last 5 years. Next slide. Millage rate. I was here the last time we raised it. Charlie, I think you were too. It was 1989. Mayor Friedman at the time raised it to hire 101 more police officers. Raised the millage 1 mil. We called it Operation Safe Streets. The millage has not been raised in 27 years. Moving forward, we will be challenged to maintain that record. But I think you should be proud, certainly I am, that this is a government that has operated within its means and moving forward for the last 27 years has maintained that millage rate at a consistent level. Now, people will pay more taxes depending on the valuation of their home. But in terms of the millage rate and our responsibility, that has remained constant. I think we are one of only 3 cities in the state of Florida that has not raised its millage rate over the last probably 5-6 years. Next slide. This is where we've been struggling. If you look at 2007, property tax revenues generated $166.2 million. 2011, when we came to office collectively, most of us, that had dropped to $122 million. The first budget that I put together, we were down to $119.4 million. We were over 700 people less than what we were in 2007. Mayor Iorio had to make some tough decisions in those, 2007, 8, 9 years. We have been doing the same job better than we've ever done it before, with 700 less people and a net loss of over $230 million from 2007 to where we find ourselves today. That is an accomplishment and a testimony to the people behind me. And it speaks volumes about how much smarter we work, how we deploy technology, how we deploy our resources. But ultimately, it's a compliment to the folks who get up every day in this department, in this city, who go to work with $230 million less dollars, doing the same thing, performing the same jobs, and doing it better than we have ever done before. Fortunately, things are changing. Part of the challenge is twofold. One, much of the growth in the tax base and tax rate has occurred in our CRAs and our TIFs, downtown in particular, which means that increase in revenue is captured in the TIF and has to remain in the TIF. All of the buildings that you see downtown and all the new construction, all of that revenue remains in the TIF and cannot be used for general obligations, general revenue obligations. The other part of that challenge is, as a result of Save Our Homes, while all of us enjoyed a tax reduction as a result of the values on our homes declining, there is a 3% cap on the appreciation. So even though those values are now climbing back up, and in some cases we are beyond where we were in 2007, the city can only recapture a maximum 3% increase per year. So it takes us a long time to get from those 2007 numbers back to where we were, or moving. We probably will be 5 years before we get back to where we were in 2007, largely because of our inability to recapture that appreciation. It makes it very, very difficult for cities and counties and schools who rely on property tax revenue to fund the bulk of their activities. Don't forget that chart. Next slide. Our two friends here in uniform, most people find this amazing when we tell this story. We generate $153 million a year in property tax. And they always hate when I bring this slide up. They're all looking at their shoes right now. Yeah, he is. $153 million in property tax, those two departments alone, those just two departments, cost us $240 million. So you can see, you know, the balancing act that we have to do to fund all the other departments and work that we do when these two agencies eat up a large, significant sum of our revenues. Next slide. Next slide. All right. Fund balance, a critical part of what we are, one of the reasons that we are so highly regarded by Wall Street. And I can tell you that Sonia lives and breathes fund balance because she knows how important that is to our financial security and the industry's opinion of our debt. Obviously, Mayor Iorio left us very healthy, 29% fund balance. That allowed us to get through those next 3 brutal years by tapping fund balance. City Council was supportive of that. Not something that we want to engage in on a yearly basis. We try to avoid it at all costs, but there was no options. We had to do that, but we never dropped below 24%, and the Wall Street rating agency standard for cities and counties is 20%. And we always maintained a significant cushion, and as a result of that, you know, our status is really, really highly regarded, and debt that we issue is snapped up almost immediately. Fiscal year 17, we're at 23% fund balance, again maintaining well beyond the reserves that we need to continue. Next slide. This is another chart that you should be proud of. This shows how aggressive we have been at keeping our personnel increases to a minimum. Remember what I talked about earlier in terms of what drives a budget, and it's largely personnel cost. I knew that as the recession started to recede, typically what government does is sort of a binge purge. In the good times, they load up on people, and in the bad times, they end up laying people off. I knew that we couldn't do that, and I was not going to be supportive of any of those kinds of efforts. You've heard me tell you, and Dennis Rojero will attest to this, I review every new hire. Every personnel addition that we make has to get approved by me. Every travel request has to be approved by me, because I know that incremental creep is what drives these numbers in the wrong direction. So our population has continued to grow, but our employee numbers have continued to remain the same. And in 2016, we got that employee number down from 4,374 employees in 2012. We got it down to 4,370. 2017, we are adding some additional bodies, largely in departments that generate the revenue that will refund that and replace it. Construction services being a great example. With more permit activity, more construction demand, we need people to keep pushing those projects through the pipeline. Our folks have done an amazing job speeding up that process. They are swamped and overworked, and we needed more people. But the good thing is, the more permits we issue, the more revenue we generate. So I can justify that. We've added some bodies in parks as well to accommodate the pool hours. Enterprise funds, we have some people. Fleet, something near and dear to Chief Ford's heart. We've added bodies, particularly mechanics, to help move those vehicles, of which we have a lot, out of the garages and back out on the streets. And we have made some significant changes in our fleet department. They were desperately needed and long overdue. And that department is now, like solid waste before it, has now been cleaned up, is fixed. Well, it's not fixed yet, but OC is going to get it fixed. And we will be a lot more productive than we have been historically. Next slide. All right, another good chart for us. If you look in comparison to other cities, we are the blue on the left. This points out the number of employees per population, and you'll see that we have less employees per population than almost any city in the state of Florida. And yet we do, I think, a better job than most of them. Our employee per 1,000 residents is 11.8. Others are at 15.3, 13.8, 12.8, 12.2. We are the lowest in the state of Florida. That is a good thing. That's how we keep our costs down. Next slide. General employees pension. As all of you know, our pensions are, as public pensions go, probably in the top 1% in terms of their stability, the longevity of it, the commitment that mayors far beyond me have made to continue to fund it at 100%. You know, when these cities take pension holidays and they don't fund their pension obligations based on anticipation of the marketplace doing well, that's how they get into trouble. That's one of the reasons Jacksonville's pension is funded at probably 35%. They have multi-billion-dollar liability in their pension that I don't know how they're going to get out of, but it was because a lot of mayors didn't do the right things. We do the right things. We have funded it at 100%, but marketplace instability last year, as well as revised mortality rates, these are things that we don't control. We have to react to them, and we're obligated to live up to our contributions, but we don't control what the market does, have resulted in an increase in pension contributions to both general employees as well as police and fire. They are funded at 92% for GE, and next slide, and 93% for F&P. I would submit to you there aren't too many pensions in the country that are as well run, as well funded, and as well vested as the city of Tampa's, and you should be proud of that. But they are not inexpensive. And when the market goes south, our contributions go up, as do the contributions, particularly in F&P of the employees. I think they are north, and Steve may correct me, of 12% contributions from their paychecks to their pension. It is a shared pain, shared gain scenario. That's exactly why this is so successful, and why it has done so well, and why we were all in this together. But you'll see at the end of this, those pension contributions are not inexpensive, and we have to allocate for that every year. Next slide. All right, another burden on us, as it is on any government, any household, healthcare costs. If you look at the blue line, in this case, the blue line is bad, the green line is good. These are annual healthcare costs on a national healthcare trend, which is the blue line. As you can see, they are going straight up, basically. And what you see is the city of Tampa's healthcare trends. And as you can see, we are far below the national healthcare trend. We are managing our costs better than the national averages. There are a couple of reasons for that, one of which is the clinics that we established in 2011. From their inception, those two wellness centers have seen 60,000 visits by our employees or their dependents. That's over 7,000 unique visitors. Over 45,000 prescriptions have been filled at our wellness centers. This gives our employees an opportunity to monitor and manage their own health by providing them these clinics that I think have largely led to us being below the national average in terms of healthcare costs. But both lines are still going up. We're going to have some discussion over the next year about our healthcare plan. We are self-funded. If we get a few bad cases, which we did this year, cases that are worth millions of dollars, that has a direct impact on that line right there. So we're going to have a discussion about our healthcare costs, about the prioritization, about the cost associated with it. Obviously, it's going to impact our employees to some degree, but we can't continue to run at that rate. It's significant, and we need to pay attention to it. So there is more to come on that front. Next slide. These are the medical trend rates for other jurisdictions around us. If you see significantly lower numbers in the right-hand column, 3.6, 3.9, in all likelihood, that is because they are dipping into their reserves to pay for healthcare costs. As you can see, we are below the national medical trend at 7.4, and medical trends is nationally at 8%. The ones that you see there, for example, City of St. Pete at 8% being the national trend, the premium increase at 3.6, they're funding that out of somewhere else. We are trying to pass the true cost on to the folks that are absolutely using it. Next slide. All right, these are capital improvement numbers. I'm not going to go through them all, but obviously you can see it's a lot of money. We've got a lot of improvements, a lot of deferred maintenance that we have to do that we weren't able to do because of the recession, that we are now trying to catch up on. There's a lot of things in there, from the convention center to water, wastewater, transportation, T&I, solid waste, that we will be prioritizing this year. Next slide. Next slide. This is a chart that I'm particularly proud of, and look at 2003. There was $2.6 million invested in our neighborhoods. And look at where we are now on this budget that I'm giving you. Counting Julian B. Lane, that is a $69.5 million investment in projects that affect our neighborhoods in every one of your districts. Obviously, 34.5% of this is Riverfront Park, but even if you take that $35 million out of it, without JBL, you're at about $34.5 million, which is $14 million more than last year's budget, which when I came in 2012, we were at 12.4. We've increased it every year moving forward to make sure that our neighborhoods get the benefits that they deserve, that we catch up on deferred maintenance, that we do new projects if we are able to, but that we understand that our neighborhoods are where people live. And you know, as sexy as downtown is, and downtown is a neighborhood, we have other needs out there that we have to accommodate. But if we don't have the growth, we can't do the things that we need to do to take care of streets in Sulphur Springs and East Tampa and North Tampa and Tampa Heights. Next slide. These are some of the investments that we will be making. Obviously, Fire Station 23. You've got stormwater issue in here, and that stormwater number is our commitment to what we hope will be a successful stormwater initiative that you guys will be dealing with in the not too distant future. Thanks to your input, we have revised that plan and are doing the very best that we can to minimize the impact on the people that we represent by using other sources of money, $20 million, including CIT dollars. But I can tell you that absent a successful vote on that plan, there is very little stormwater money in this budget. We need that vote. We need you guys to do the right thing on that, because our ability to fix the stormwater problem, not in its entirety, we're never going to fix it in its entirety, but to mitigate significantly the impact requires money. I know it's not cheap. I recognize that. I deal with these numbers every day, but I also see the impact every day of not doing what we need to do. It's going to be a courageous vote on your part. I understand that. I understand the pushback that you'll get from some, but I would only ask you to look at the long term of this community. We cannot duct tape and patch our stormwater system with existing revenues. We have got to have a dedicated revenue source. And so I would only ask you to, in the quiet of the night, as you think about that decision and that vote, just think about the long-term impact of this, and I am confident that you guys will do the right thing. Next slide. Obviously, roads are a big part of it. People accuse us of having every road in the city torn up. That's not entirely inaccurate. But they desperately needed it. You know, there was a lot of deferred maintenance that hadn't occurred on our road network, resurfacing, potholes. We, to the extent that we can afford it, are trying to do the best we can to fix it. I recognize it's an inconvenience. I am on the road every day, all over the city, and I get it. But I also understand, like the stormwater issue, we can't continue to keep our heads in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. We've got to fix our infrastructure. Next slide. Next slide. These are some of the, and I'll go through these pretty quickly, these are some, but not all, of the projects in each of the respective, well, this is This is Stormwater Capital Improvement Plan. If council votes to approve this, this is where you're going to see the improvements. These are projects that your vote will allow us to do. They are throughout the city. Obviously, some areas of our community have more challenges than others. It allows everybody in this community to bear a small burden to accomplish this. You can't do it by individual district. It has to be a community-wide effort. And we can't look at this as, well, my neighborhood doesn't have problems, so therefore I shouldn't pay. This is an issue that affects everybody. We drive through it. Our cars get flooded in it. It doesn't matter what neighborhood you're in. You are affected by it, and we need to find some way to do something about it. Next slide. These are, what you see is the red. That is in anticipation of a positive vote. What you see in the blue is what will happen if there's not a positive vote. We don't have the revenues absent that stormwater assessment to do major improvements. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, we don't have it. I don't anticipate us having it. We literally will be just patching old pipes, absent a dedicated revenue source. Next slide. These are some of the projects. I know this is hard to see, so I'll go through this quickly. In individual single-member districts, next slide. You will have in your packet these projects identified. This is not the entirety of it. This is some of the more significant ones. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. All right, enterprise funds, we'll go through this quickly. Obviously very stable, very well run, great leadership in each of the departments. A lot of work getting done out here. Water, wastewater, solid waste, parking. Parking is healthy, unlike a number of years ago where it was hemorrhaging red ink. Parking is gotten much better moving forward. Next slide. And this is one of the things that I, and certainly Sonia and Mike Perry and all of our folks who are sitting here behind me in the first 2 or 3 rows, are really proud of. In spite of the worst recession since the Great Depression, in spite of the fact that we started this journey together, $30 million in the hole, in spite of the fact that those unemployment numbers were what they were, and the devaluation of our property was what it was. Your city has received 8 rating upgrades since 2011. I don't know a jurisdiction, certainly around here, and perhaps in the state, that can lay claim to 8 upgrades of our credit ratings like we can. We are in good financial position in terms of Wall Street. They recognize that. They recognize the leadership of the people you see behind us. They recognize that we have made the tough decisions in order to make sure that we were stable and that we were financially solid. Those rating increases, like your own personal credit rating, means that you can buy more because your credit rating is better and you're paying less of an interest rate. When we go to the markets to float debt, we get that debt at a lower rate because this slide that you see right here. We want to maintain that. That is a very, very complicated, but very, very positive thing for this city, and you guys should be really, really proud. Next slide. So as we wrap this up, these are what we set out to do every year in terms of the larger parameters and framework for how this government works. These are our goals and our missions. This is how we wrap this budget up. Always trying to think of these main goals. We have a number in this budget. As all of you know, we are in the midst of negotiating with our 3 bargaining units, the ATU, Local 754 of the International Association of Firefighters, and the PBA. All of their leadership is here. They have been great partners with us moving forward. We started that negotiations, as all of you know. When I first came in, we did a 3-year deal because I wanted to give them the certainty of what the future looked like. And we gave our employees a deal that in spite of all of those things that we were dealing with, I think reflected of the value that we hold them in and the appreciation for what they do. We can never do enough for them, but we do what we can with the resources that we have. The number that is in this budget literally is a placeholder because we will be going through this process for the next couple weeks with our bargaining units. It has been open. I mean, I don't hide anything. And I hope that they would tell you that we start this with basically, this is what we have, folks. I'm not, I don't have secret escrow accounts. You don't have to hire a forensic accountant to figure out how much money we have. This is what we have. And I think it's good for all of us because they get a perspective, briefly, for what it's like to sit in my chair and have to balance all of these competing needs. And so we will be negotiating with them over the next couple of weeks. Eventually, this will come to you as a council. There will be hurdles. I mean, that's just part of the negotiating process. I will do for them what I can. But what I can't do, I will tell them. And I will tell them why I can't do it. And I can't put us at financial risk moving forward because that would be fiscally irresponsible. But I absolutely will do for the men and women that serve us and serve this community everything that I possibly can within what I have. I'm now turning this over to you guys. I have talked way too long. It has been it's a complicated process, and as all of you know, this budget is balanced, but it wasn't easy getting there. This has been the toughest budget that we have had over the last 5 years in terms of all of the low-hanging fruit has been picked. I mean, we have dug through every account. We have eliminated every unfilled position. We have moved money around. We have done everything we possibly could to get to this point. There is little fat in this budget. I can tell you moving forward, in spite of the fact that the economy is doing better, in spite of the fact that the construction industry is doing better, we will have challenges. Whether it's healthcare costs, whether it's pension contributions, whether it's the payroll package that we put together, we are not out of the woods yet. And I don't want to leave this city 3 years from now in a position that whoever follows me and whoever follows a lot of you will really have to make much tougher decisions than we've had to make over the last 5 years. That is not something that I would prefer to do, and I will do everything I can to avoid that. But I can tell you that if you pluck something out of this budget, it's going to affect something else somewhere else. And so the council has been very supportive of what we've done for the last 5 years. You've made some suggestions and some additions, but this is a very tightly woven budget. And moving things are going to affect other things. There's no fat in here, no additional money that we park somewhere that we can plug in. So I would just, as I turn this over to you, I would urge you to look at it in the context of that because we don't have much room. I mean, we really do not have much room. The budget is balanced. Depending on the union negotiations, we may have to come back to you for a budget allocation. That is entirely within the realm of possibilities. But I would hope that as we move forward that we can continue with all the great things that we have done. These are exciting times for our community. And so as I wrap this up, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the folks that are sitting right here behind me. This is a year in the making. I mean, we start this process after you adopt the budget on September 31st for the next year. This is a constant process for our revenue and finance people. They do amazing work. The amount of detail that's involved in pulling this all together, all the scenarios and all the the things that we have to do to get this done couldn't happen without our amazing staff. What I would like to do first and foremost is recognize our revenue and finance staff led by the ever capable Sonia Little. Would you all stand up? All of our revenue and finance. These people do an amazing job. Mike Perry and Ty and all of the folks that we see behind us, they do an amazing job to get us to this point. I would put him up against any revenue and finance department in the country, and would have no problem telling them that we're the best. So thank you to all of you for making this happen. And then the other part of this equation is all the other folks that are here today that serve you and serve this community. We've had a great team in place for 5 years. The vast majority of them were here when I got here and have stayed with me through the duration. I couldn't do what I do without them. So would all the rest of the city folks stand up and take a bow? That being said, council members, colleagues, the budget is yours. Thank you for the indulgence. I appreciate all that we have accomplished together. I can tell you this, that when we leave here, this will be a different city. And all of you should be proud of what you have done to help make it that way. Councilmember Monteleone, good luck to you. We've enjoyed having you here for 5 years and the contributions that you have made. All the best, and to whoever fills your seat this fall, train them up, all right? Let's
Well,
get
she's
them right.
still got a few more months, Mayor, but
Oh, I know,
thanks
I
for
know.
the, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the budget presentation. Mr. Miranda had a comment to make.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank all your staff. And there's a couple of things that you learned today. You learned 3 new words. Next page, please. You did that very well. And then, however, there's rumors that I have to dispel. Every time I turn the TV or read the newspaper, it says that you're going to maybe run for another office and that you may be a appointee to some person if that person gets elected president. And then now you just said that you're going to finish your term the next 3 years. Which one is it?
No pressure.
Wow.
No pressure.
Mr.
at all.
Mayor,
Just
this
rumors. I mean,
is not a press conference, so.
those are rumors, Mr. Mayor, and I hate to put you in the hot seat. I know you got other things to do.
Your
But no,
Whatever
you don't
it
have to
is,
answer me.
Mr.
We got
You don't have to answer me. I'm just,
Whatever it is, Mr. Miranda, it will be huge.